the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Chile's Constitutional Court is debating whether to grant parole to former soldiers accused of crimes against humanity under the Pinochet dictatorship. To allow parole, an amendment would have to be made into law. Members of the political coalition party Chile Vamos have petitioned the court to declare the amendment as unconstitutional. The former soldiers are accused of carrying out kidnappings, forced disappearances, torture, and the rape and murder of women and children.
This country knows that those who committed crimes against humanity, genocide and mass torture deserve to be condemned.
We are here because we don't want the criminals to escape the justice by serving their few terms in jail. Because they commit many human rights violations, they cannot go unpunished. They were murderers, raped women, killed children, and tortured people.
And the country's Human Rights Commission has approved the jail terms for any person who denies the crimes committed during the Pinochet dictatorship. Under the new measure, fines will also be issued. Chile is finally adhering to international law by condemning people that deny the barbarity of the military dictatorship. Still in Chile, video has emerged this week showing the last few moments of the life of Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca. The footage contradicts a statement made by the head of the police, who said evidence of police presence in the area that day had been destroyed. Our correspondent Tiare Valenzuela has more details on this story.
Police are now attempting to shoot down claims that fellow officers' body cameras recorded graphic footage that could implicate police in the murder of Camilo Catrillanca. The young Mapuche leader was gunned down on November 14th, allegedly by members of the Special Police Unit. Fresh evidence in the form of several videos was released by a media outlet earlier on Thursday. In fact, one of the videos shows the exact moment Catrillanca was fatally shot. The footage was believed to have been captured by body cameras worn by officers allegedly involved in Catrillanca's murder. The video sparked widespread outrage on social media, triggering renewed calls from the Chilean public and Mapuche community for the head of Public Security Minister Andres Chadwick and Police Chief Hermes Soto. The government has also reportedly asked the police chief to resign. The Piñera administration is expected to make a decision on the case sometime later today.
Tiare Valenzuela from Chile. And protesters clashed with riot police in Chile after the police chief was asked to resign by the president, following the release of the video showing Catrillanca's death. Hermes Soto and other 10 police officers had been asked to step down as President Sebastián Piñera is looking to shake up the leadership of the police. Protests in support of the indigenous Mapuche community have gained momentum in recent weeks. A wealthy businessman is being accused of hoarding historic and indigenous artifacts in Chile, allegedly stolen from museums, public parks, and cemeteries. Raúl Schuller was charged with violating laws that protect national monuments and regulate weapon possession. Pre-Columbian artifacts, fossils, and 19th century rifles were among many other items discovered at the estate of the 74-year-old man. According to court filings, the loot was valued at around $400,000 US. US President Donald Trump has signed the Nicaraguan Investment Conditionality Act, or the NICA Act, into law. This will see a number of economic sanctions imposed on the government of Nicaragua. The signing comes 9 days after the US Congress approved the act. The main purpose of the NICA Act is to cut Nicaragua's access to international financing. The effects could devastate the Nicaraguan economy in a country which has seen its standards of living constantly rise over the past 10 years under the Sandinista government. Our correspondent in Managua, María José Díaz, has more.
El presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, Late on Thursday, US President Donald Trump signed the NICA Act, a law that imposes economic sanctions on the government of Nicaragua. This is part of their imperialist strategy against progressive governments. Under this law, the government of Nicaragua must get approval from the US government for any loan coming from international financial institutions. This intrusive law first reached the United States Congress in 2016, supported by Cuban-American Congress members and by the Nicaraguan opposition. Now it has been approved despite the political crisis Nicaragua has been living over the past few months, a crisis that started back in April at the hands of the opposition groups who led a failed coup attempt that left nearly 200 dead. Reactions to the NICA Act on the streets of Nicaragua have been almost entirely negative, as the people recognize it will harm those most vulnerable. As of now, the government has yet to issue an official response.
Maria Jose Diaz from Managua. Now to Ecuador, people have taken to the streets to reject the new economic measures introduced by President Lenin Moreno. Teachers, students, drivers, and everyday citizens gathered in Quito to protest. This has been the first demonstration against the government's so-called paquetazo, which is made up of price hikes, budget cuts, and layoffs. Our correspondent Denise Herrera was at the protest on Thursday. Here's what she had to say.
Social organizations of workers, teachers, transporters, and citizens have marched today against the latest economic measures taken by the government of the President Lenin Moreno. They are rejecting the new increase in gasoline prices. Now we are close to the government palace. People here are trying to talk with President Lenin Moreno, but as you can see behind me, the police closed the streets so they can go to the government palace. They are rejecting these measures that said that President Lenin Moreno are not thinking in the citizens, and he is just thinking in the companies. According to the Minister of Economy, Richard Martinez, this decision was taken to put an end of these absurdities and stop with the subsidies. So he said that the public transport and the taxis will not be affected by this measure. However, the citizens here in Quito and the social organizations said that they are rejecting this measure, and they also said they will continue with the struggle to defend their rights, and also they say they will take in action to defend their needs. So this no end here, they will continue to take in action. So it's all for now.
That's Denise Herrera from Quito. And protesters who spoke out against the government's austerity measures, condemning what they see as a turn towards neoliberalism in Ecuador.
I think that what brings us all together today is that we feel indignation towards the President Lenin Moreno, who won the elections with a government plan which was approved to benefit the majorities, but now he's fulfilling the agenda of neoliberalism, the agenda of the business owners.
Personally, I think that this is the height of what we're seeing with the bundled austerity measures, with the price hikes, with the rise of gasoline prices. I think this is going to affect all of us, and I think if we stay quiet, we're going to be worse. So we need to protest. We need to say enough is enough.
This event is organized by a number of social organizations, of transport and self-employed workers, and of course workers' unions. We are here as citizens, but also as assembly members to join the public in rejecting the economic measures of this government. The government has raised the price of fuel, which means that the price of everything will go up in Ecuador. For example, basic necessities. This will affect the poor, the majority of Ecuadorians. On the other hand, they forgive multi-million-dollar debts for those who have the most, the bankers, for the multinational companies. Billions of dollars were forgiven for millionaires.
Now to Cuba. The Baseball Federation of Cuba and Major League Baseball have signed a historic agreement that will allow Cuban athletes to play in the United States. After 3 years of negotiations, this agreement has established a stable and non-political relationship between the two sport organizations. This will regulate and streamline the entry of Cuban players into the U.S. to play in the MLB without the need for players to defect. Nonetheless, there are concerns that the Trump administration could interfere in this agreement due to their hardline stance on Latin America's progressive governments. 50% of the proposals in the new draft for Cuba's constitution were approved during the popular consultation period. Homero Acosta, the Secretary of Cuba's State Council, reported that 4,809 proposals were accepted and will be in the new constitution. However, Acosta said that the fact that the criteria had been accepted does not mean its appearance in the final document is going to be exact. If the Assembly supports the draft, the State Council will call for a popular referendum for February to decide whether or not to approve the new constitution.
Different groups were assigned to evaluate various aspects of the new constitution. From the preamble to various articles, everything was carefully perused and evaluated. As the draft constitution was evaluated by a central body, divergent views were taken into account. Representatives of the editorial commission were also part of the vetting process in which each subgroup's proposals were discussed. All of these interests then got together and, along with a special analysis group, are to prepare a final proposal to the committee.
More stories coming up. We'll be back.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Friday. Only on Telesur. Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Mexican police have detained at least 24 migrants as they try to evict them from the Benito Juarez Sports Center in Tijuana. In the early hours of Thursday, police raided the complex to evict some 200 migrants. They have been moved to an alternative shelter while they wait for their asylum claims to the U.S. to be processed. The official reason for the raid is not yet known. Mexico has agreed to the proposal by the United States to let third country migrants remain in or be returned to Mexico while their asylum claims are proceeded. The term refers to migrants who are applying for visas in countries outside of their homeland in order to go to another destination where they hope to secure asylum. The decision is seen as a historic step, as Mexico has until now refused to accept the return of migrants who are not Mexican. Mexico's government has said this is a temporary humanitarian measure. During a business forum in Uruguay, President Tabaré Vázquez spoke about the country's economic growth through 2018 and added that Uruguay will not enter a recession.
Despite what has been said of Uruguay, that we were going to enter a recession in December, that simply did not happen. We saw an economic growth of 2.5% in the third trimester alone. According to forecasts by the Ministry of the Economy, we also believe that this fourth trimester will show growth of either 2 or 2.5%. Uruguay did not go into recession, and it will not go into recession.
We move to Venezuela, where the Bolivarian People's Congress took place in Caracas. The international event brought together municipal councilors, social movements, governors, executive cabinet members, and representatives of the Latin American left. Speaking at the Congress, President Nicolás Maduro talked about economic recovery and national defense.
It's true that there is an economic war that we must defeat with recuperation, prosperity, and a growth program. It's true, and we are working towards that every day.
We must strengthen the civic-military alliance in every parish, in every municipality, in every state. And we must be prepared to respond in a timely manner and continuously to any coup plotting threat which could take place in the course of the coming weeks or months.
And the government of Venezuela has announced the expulsion of Juan Carlos Pérez Villamizar, a non-accredited Colombian consular officer from the country. Venezuela's government has said that he was working in the country without the proper permits, in open violation of international conventions. This follows what the government has referred to as the arbitrary expulsion by Colombian authorities of Venezuelan citizen Carlos Pino. Pino was an official in the Venezuelan embassy in Bogotá and was, quote, kidnapped by Colombian authorities and arbitrarily removed from the country. The Venezuelan people have once again rejected aggressive U.S. policies which aim to harm Venezuela's peace and economic stability. Let's find out more.
U.S. pressure on Venezuela has intensified over the last couple of months. Economic strangulation, magnicide, and destruction are all part of U.S. plans that want to diminish peace.
How can they mess with Venezuela? Venezuela is a country which is not colonialist. It's a country which isn't expansionist. It's a country that is respectful, a country of peace, and a socialist country.
Those are the words of the people who are against the interventionist attitudes of U.S. President Donald Trump in his attempt to distort the production of food, medicine, and basic goods for the people of Venezuela.
We are celebrating Christmas, and they want to take that away from us with the sanctions and the economic and financial blockade, also the social and political blockade. That's what they want. They don't want Nicolás Maduro to swear in on January 10th.
Analysts warn of a new military aggression against Venezuela.
The United States takes advantage of its hegemonic position and threatens other countries. A little over 80% of its commercial transactions are done with U.S. dollars. The dollar has turned into a tool of dominance, of pressure on other countries, and therefore threatens any country that can have some type of relationship with Venezuela.
The National Constituent Assembly of Venezuela is in favor of approving an accord that ratifies dialogue to consolidate the future of Venezuela, respecting the laws, the Constitution, as well as democracy.
Grenada's top telecommunications company, Flow, has filed a lawsuit against the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority for discrimination. It wants to revoke a decision made by the regulator to award the 700 spectrum license to an Irish-based company, Digicel. Flow has claimed the regulator unfairly awarded the license to Digicel, despite the fact that both companies simultaneously applied for it. Hidden in the middle of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Royal Portuguese Reading Room Library makes visitors feel like they've walked onto a movie set. Built in 1837, the Grand Library holds around 350,000 books. It's been selected as the 4th most beautiful library in the world by Time magazine. The library also has the largest collection of Portuguese literature outside Portugal. We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Chinese government has accused the United States of fabricating evidence against 2 Chinese nationals accused of hacking U.S. agencies and companies. A statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry said these accusations aim to tarnish China's image and its relationship with other nations. It further called on to the U.S. to drop the charges against the 2 Chinese nationals on risks of damaging the relations between the 2 countries.
The United States has fabricated facts and made unwarranted accusations on the issue of cybersecurity against China and indicted 2 Chinese persons on the grounds of so-called cyber theft. This move is a serious violation of the basic norms of international relations and seriously damages Sino-US cooperation and is of very bad nature. The Chinese side is resolutely opposed to this and has already made solemn representations to the US.
The Turkish government has said it will continue to cooperate with Iran despite US-imposed sanctions. This news comes as Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has visited Turkey. His counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the United States for abandoning the Iran nuclear deal. The 2 men have also agreed to increase trade between both nations.
I would like to emphasize once again that the United States' decision on sanctions against Iran jeopardizes regional security and stability. We are ready to take all measures to minimize the negative effects on legitimate trade relations between our countries. Our efforts continue with this. Neighborhood relationships require mutual support during difficult times.
Pope Francis has asked priests who have sexually abused minors to turn themselves in for judgment. This call is seen as one of his strongest comments ever in regards to the crisis sweeping the Roman Catholic Church.
To those who abuse minors, I would say this: convert and hand yourself over to human justice and prepare for divine justice. Dear brothers and sisters, let it be clear that before these abominations, the Church will spare no effort to do all that is necessary to bring to justice whosoever has committed such crimes. The Church will never seek to hush up or not take seriously any case.
At least 13 workers in a mine have been killed and another 8 are missing after a methane explosion at a coal mine in the Czech Republic. The explosion took place about 800 meters below the surface during the afternoon. 10 miners were injured in the blast, and rescue operations are slow due to poor visibility. Gatwick's airport in the United Kingdom was shut down for nearly 36 hours due to drones flying over the runway. The incident left tens of thousands of passengers stranded at the airport. Details have yet to be released about the total number of drones that caused the shutdown, but authorities reportedly disabled at least 3 drones. The main runway has finally reopened and a limited number of planes have arrived and departed.
And we are now having departures and arriving flights, and we are processing passengers at Gatwick Airport once again for the first time since 9 o'clock on Wednesday evening. I'd just like to reiterate my apology again to all those passengers whose travel has been disrupted, and I fear there's going to be continued disruption into the weekend, but we have a plan to have 110,000 passengers travel out to Gatwick Airport today.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that his Defense Secretary, James Mattis, will be retiring in February. Trump tweeted the surprise announcement, saying that Mattis was a great help in getting allies and other countries to pay their share of military obligations. This despite the many differences and conflicts that the president has had with Mattis. Trump added that he will name a new Secretary of Defense shortly. And now let's turn to stories from around the world.
The first group of Yazid women and refugees who were persecuted by the Islamic State in northern Iraq have arrived in France. This group is made up of 16 women and children out of a total of 83 who have been granted refugee status by the French government under a special refugee program, a program that will see hundreds of refugees from Syria and Iraq move to France.
The president has met Nadia Murad, who's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and who voiced the cause of the Yazidi families a few weeks ago. He made a commitment, which is that France will welcome 100 women with their children. So tonight, these are the first families that are being welcomed. Some of them will be hosted in Ile-de-France, some in the southwest and some in the east, in places that have been prepared, with organizations accompanying them.
Protests against the postponement of presidential elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have continued to spread. Students at the country's main university in the capital Kinshasa took to the streets shortly after the Electoral Commission announced the postponement. Protests have also been reported in other smaller cities across the country. This is the third time elections have been postponed since 2016. Hundreds of heavily armed police officers have been deployed on the streets of Barcelona ahead of the Spanish government's cabinet meeting in the city. Large protests are taking place in the city against the cabinet meeting. Pro-Catalan independence activists have found the decision by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to hold the cabinet meeting in Barcelona a mockery of their struggle for independence. In October 2017, Catalonians voted to secede from Spain, a decision that has attracted a severe backlash from the Spanish government.
A South Korean research institute has announced that K-pop boy band BTS is boosting tourism to the country. A reported 1 out of every 13 tourists visited South Korea last year because of the increasing popularity of the band. BTS is estimated to be worth $3.6 billion to the domestic economy. Earlier this year, the group became the first K-pop band to top the US music charts. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. For this and other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're also on social media, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.